The next section deals with types of locomotion that we see in mammals and also the anatomical specializations that are associated with that specialized form of locomotion. So the first and most basic type is walking and running. And if we're talking about something that's really efficient and good at moving quickly in a terrestrial environment, we call that cursorial. Almost always these mammals are quadrupedal. So here's an example of one of the typical quadrupedal terrestrial mammals. This is a wolf. Humans are also in this category, but they're the only mammals that are truly bipedal, that move on two legs virtually all the time. So one interesting thing about these kinds of mammals is that they move their legs differently depending on how fast they go. So I'm going to show little bits of this video of dogs. Almost all these locomotion videos are accompanied by cheesy music, so sorry about that. All right, so this is a dog going at this one is walking, so this is slow. And each foot hits the ground separately, and they're 3 feet on the ground pretty much all the time. And then if we go a little farther, this is trotting where 2 feet are hitting the ground at any one time. So this is sort of medium speed. And if we go even faster, this is a different way of the feet hitting the ground. Oops, we're back to trotting in this one. All right, so the bottom line is that depending on how fast the quadruped is going, its feet are going to be doing sort of different things. But it makes it very efficient whether it's moving slowly or at a medium speed or quickly. All right, so if we look at the structure of the limbs in typical quadrupedal terrestrial mammals, there's actually 3 different kinds of structures that we commonly see. So the first is plantigrade. This is where the toes and the foot bones and the ankle bones are all in contact with the ground or the substrate. So humans are of this variety. This is a squirrel. Bears are also like this. There are many mammals where the whole foot is in contact with the ground as it's moving. We also have digitigrade mammals where if you look at all the bones of the leg and the heel and the foot, those bones are up off the ground, and the only thing in contact with the ground are the digits. So that's where they get the name digitigrade. So our dog is an example of that. And then finally we have unguligrade, and these are mammals where all the leg bones and the ankle bones and the foot bones and the toe bones are up off the substrate. The only thing in contact with the substrate are the hooves, which are just like fingernails and toenails. They're made of keratin, so they're really up on their tippy toes. All right, moving along to another form of locomotion. Saltatorial locomotion refers to mammals that jump or spring or hop or bound. And there are 2 different varieties of this, quadrupedal and bipedal. So an example of a quadrupedal saltatorial species is a rabbit. And if you look at the picture of the rabbit, you'll see its hind legs are stretching forward. They're going to touch the ground and push off. But then its front legs are going to come out and hit the ground and sort of catch the animal as it finishes the hop. So it touches with its 4 feet, lands with its hind feet, pushes off with its hind feet, touches with its 4 feet. So it goes back and forth, front to back feet. So it uses all 4 feet in locomotion. If we contrast that with the bipedal saltatory species, and this form of locomotion is often called ricochetal, like this kangaroo, their front legs don't really have anything to do with locomotion. They're only touching down with their hind legs and then bouncing off the ground. So we'll take a really quick look at the video of kangaroos hopping. I'm going to scoot on ahead. So here we go. You can see it hopping along, pushing off its hind legs. as it moves around. So there are particular anatomical specializations that are associated with this form of locomotion. The first thing that we see is that the hind limbs, which are where the major pushing energy comes from, are very, very enlarged. They're longer, they're wider. Also, we see that the center of gravity of the animal is shifted towards the rear of the body. So they tend to have small shoulders, small front legs, and very large hindquarters, very large muscles in their hind legs, and very large hind feet. And then in the ricochettal species especially, we see a long tail that acts as a counterbalance. So if we look back at the picture of the kangaroo, you can see the enlarged hind feet. You can see how big the back half of the animal's body is. The front half kind of hangs off this way, and then the tail is a counterweight that hangs off the other way. The next category is swimming, and there are actually 3 different ways that mammals have adapted to live in the water. The first category is amphibious, and that refers to mammals that spend part of their time in a terrestrial environment and part of the time in the water. You can also see them referred to as semi-aquatic. So the best example, or a good example of this, is the otter. They spend a lot of time in the water and they're well suited for swimming, but they also spend a lot of time running around on the ground like any other terrestrial quadruped. So I have a quick video to show you of an otter swimming. Again, cheesy music. All right, so the kinds of things that we see in amphibious mammals are thick fur that is waterproof, so that prevents the animal from losing heat to the water. The water is usually colder than the mammal. Also webbed feet that are used for propulsion, and those webbed feet can be on the hind limbs or on the front limbs or both. And then the tail is often flattened, and it can provide both propulsion and stability. So helps the mammal make a steady path through the water and also pushes it through the water. The second category is what we call aquatic, and those are species that live almost their entire lives in the water. They can come out of the water, and some of their basic functions, like giving birth, happen on land, but they spend almost all their time in the water, and they're highly adapted for swimming. The example is a sea lion. Here's a sea lion cub, and the main reason for showing you this picture, it's cute, so that's a good reason, but there's a better reason. You can see that it has a very thick coat of fur, and so that's one of the characteristics of aquatic mammals. They do have a very, very thick coat of waterproof fur. So the other characteristics that you'll want to watch for in the video are that the front and hind limbs are modified into flippers for propulsion. So the same 5 bones are there, 5 digits are there that are true for most mammals, but there's a very thick webbing of connective tissue stretching in between them so that they're like paddles. And they use those paddles to either kick themselves through the water or pull themselves through the water with their front feet. They also have a thick layer of subcutaneous fat, we call that blubber, and that helps insulate their bodies from the cold water. So they have both very thick fur that insulates them and very thick subcutaneous fat. And then they have just a little tiny nub of a tail. They don't use their tail for propulsion or for stability like the amphibious species do. So they're using their flippers, front and hind limbs, for moving in the water, for steering, for everything they need to control in the water. So I'm going to start the video now, and you can look for all those different characteristics. All right, so as you'll see from the caption, this is 3 hours of soothing, relaxing, cute sea lions. We're not going to watch for 3 hours, but I do want you to look at the flippers. These are the front flippers. Here are the hind flippers. And then there's just a little nub of a tail. You can see one here. So the tail has nothing to do with locomotion in aquatic species. It's all the front and hind flippers that pull the animal through the water or push the animal through the water. The third group of species we call marine, and you'll also see this referred to as fully aquatic. And these are species that spend their entire lives 24/7 in the water, never come out. So one example that's probably fairly familiar to everybody is dolphins and whales. The manatees and sea cows are also fully aquatic. And they have a number of characteristics that are unique to being marine. They have very often a fusion of the cervical vertebrae, so that's the vertebrae in the neck, and that stiffens the body so that they can move more efficiently through the water. Water has a lot of resistance to movement, so it's more efficient to be a solid structure than to be really floppy. The forelimbs are modified into flippers that provide stability. They don't have much to do with propulsion or steering other than kind of guiding the front half of the body. We don't see any hind limbs, and most of the bones of the pelvic girdle are no longer present. So there are some bones that you can see on an x-ray or if you dissect one of these aquatic species, but you can't see anything externally. And then the tail is flattened into a fluke like this that provides propulsion as the animal's moving through the water. So it's like an engine or a motor that's in the back of a boat pushing it through the water. They also have a thick layer of subcutaneous fat, also called blubber, which serves the same function as in aquatic species. It insulates them against heat loss to the water. It also makes them buoyant, and it also makes them a very advantageous shape for moving in the water without a lot of external bumps and things sticking out that cause turbulence in the water. So we'll see a quick video of swimming dolphins. So you'll see that the subcutaneous fat makes the outline of the body very smooth and makes it buoyant in the water so that it doesn't, that's not a dolphin, so that it doesn't have to use a lot of energy just to hang out at a particular depth in the water. The front limbs are modified into flippers. If you did an x-ray, you'd still see hand and finger bones here. And then the hind limbs are not visible, and the tail has this connective tissue fluke that enables the dolphin to push itself efficiently through the water.